theory, performance, rhythm, harmony, line and form, acoustics, notation, orchestration, neurology, and perception. These are the keys to understanding music. Hello, and welcome to Understanding Music. In the previous two videos, we were looking at intervals, and we are going to continue to do that today. Only today we're going to look at intervals that are larger than an octave. Now, we started off looking at the major scale and a progression of intervals. And remember that an interval is the distance in pitch between any two notes. And the progression of intervals for the major scales, you start on a note and you go up a whole tone, and then another whole tone, and then a semitone, and then a whole tone, and a whole tone, and a whole tone, and another semitone. And the reason that the major scale has that melody is because of that configuration of notes. You start on a note and you go up two semitones, and then one. And then we looked at how different keys can start on different notes as long as we use that same intervallic relationship, which we call whole tone, semitone, whole tone, semitone. When we started looking at the intervals, we took that progression of notes and we played it against the tonic. Do with do, do with re, do with mi, and fa, and so on, through the notes of the scale. And then we came up with another progression of intervals, which are the progression of the notes in the scale when they're played against the tonic, which was called perfect unison, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and the perfect octave. Now, remember that the definition of an interval is the distance in pitch between any two notes. So, for example, if we took the notes middle C and the E just above it, we call this a major third. The third comes from the fact that we're counting do, re, mi, or a count of three notes from the bottom note to the top note. The major comes from, well, a number of things. The definition of do to mi is a major third, but it fits into that whole tone. We start on the note, in this case C, and we go up a whole tone, two semitones, and then another whole tone, two semitones. And that is the definition of a major third, going up four semitones and also three scale steps. Now, what if we took the note middle C and the E above it? What are we going to call that? An interval larger than an octave is called a compound interval. So in old classical circles, we would take this note middle C and the higher E, and we would call that a compound third. The way that works is you take the octave off, figure out what the base interval is, and then if it's an octave larger, we call that a compound. So an octave and a compound second, compound third, compound fourth, compound fifth, and so on. Now, one of the problems with the term compound, it can also refer to an interval that is two octaves higher, plus an interval. So more recently, we use more specific names, and the first several that come above the octave, we use the same counting pattern as we do for the intervals in the octave. Middle C to A is a major sixth, and then one above is a major seventh. Then we get to the perfect octave, and the octave is 8, so the note above that would be a 9. From middle C to the D above it, we would count, if we started on the C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's the same concept. So that note middle C to the E above it, we'd call that a major 10th. And if it was the E flat, we would call that a minor 10th. Major 10th, perfect 11th, perfect 12th, and major 13th. And all of those intervals are used regularly in jazz chords with a lot of extensions. Chords like that. Now, once you get to the compound seventh, which is a perfect octave and a major seventh, we don't usually refer to that as a 14th. Usually we refer to it as a major 7 plus an octave. And then one note or one semitone higher than that is 2 octaves. And then for notes larger than that, we usually refer to the amount of octaves of difference and then the interval. So 2 octaves and a second, 2 octaves and a third. Or if you want to be more exact, 2 octaves and a major second, 2 octaves and a minor third, and so forth. Compound intervals will have the same considerations when making chromatic variations as do their non-compound counterparts. What I mean by that is if you have a major third and you lower the top note by using an accidental, in this case C and E natural, and I'm going to lower the top note by making it C and E flat. We go from calling it a major third to a minor third. Same consideration with the 10th. If we play the note C and E, that's a major 10th. If we play C and E flat, that's a minor 10th. If we play the note C and F, that's a perfect 4th. And if we raise the F with by a semitone by using a sharp, we call that an augmented 4th. If I play a C and the F above it, that's a perfect 11th. And then the C and the F sharp, we'll call that an augmented 11th. So the same considerations as to major, minor, augmented, and diminished happen to the compound intervals in the same way they do, for the intervals within the octave. Another thing is the overall feel of the interval doesn't change that much. The major third is said to be happy when compared to the minor third. And the same thing with the 10ths. The major 10th is somewhat happy when compared to the minor 10th. The augmented 4th is bright and dissonant, and so is the augmented 11th. So the overall feel and dissonance of the interval doesn't change that much, even with 2 octaves. That's 2 octaves plus a third. 2 octaves plus an augmented 4th. Once you get to 4 or 5 octaves, it's still more or less the same feel, but it starts to lose that feel, but there's not that many opportunities to have a 5 or 6 octave spread between your notes. So how do we use these intervals? Well, for the ones that are based on the 3rd and the 5th, so their compound equivalents would be the 10th and the 12th, we use them pretty much the same way. They're just octave variations in many instances of the 3rd and the 5th in your chord. You play a root 3rd 5th voicing, and I take that 3rd and I put it up an octave. Now the note on top, the interval between the root and the top note is now a major 10th. The other intervals, the 9, the 11, and the 13th, are frequently used as extensions on top of a 4-part chord, either a major 7th, a dominant 7th, or a minor 7th. The major 9 works on top of all of those. The flat 9 usually is on the dominant chord. A very romantic chord. The sharp 9 as well. It's got some bite to it. It's kind of a bluesy R&B chord and jazzish. The 11, the perfect 11 is usually used on a minor chord, whereas the sharp 11 or the augmented 11th is usually used on a dominant chord or a major chord, major 7th. The 13th and the flat 13th are usually used on dominant chords as well. And the flat 13. So, in conclusion, an interval that is larger than an octave is called a compound interval. But usually we refer to them in the same way we do the smaller intervals, by how many scale steps it takes to get from the bottom note to the top note. For example, if we have the note D and a B an octave and something higher, we still start on the bottom note and we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 till we get to the top note. And so this interval would be called, if it's an octave plus 9 semitones, we call it a major 13th. And if it was an octave plus 8 semitones, we call that a minor 13th. And compound intervals have the same quality as do their smaller counterparts. So within the octave, we have the perfect unison, the perfect fourth, the perfect fifth, and the perfect octave, and all the other ones are major. So the same thing happens with the larger intervals. The 11th is perfect, the 12th is perfect, the double octave is perfect, and then all the other ones, the 9th, the 10th, the 13th, and the major 7th plus an octave, they're all major. And if they're one semitone too small because of a chromatic variation, then they become minor. Hope this helped. Stay safe. See you soon.